In March of 2002, the world saw the release of a game called Star Wars Jedi Outcast, a continuation of a series of video games from the 90s known as Star Wars Dark Forces. Jedi Outcast told the story of a former mercenary turned Jedi turned mercenary again named Kyle Katarn, who embarks on a quest to avenge the supposed death of the woman he loves. During his crusade, Kyle struggles to re-establish his connection to the Force while also uncovering an Imperial plot to destroy the Jedi, and attempting to resist the ever-present pull of the dark side. With its simple and entertaining narrative, as well as some of the best lightsaber combat ever seen in a video game, Jedi Outcast provided an exciting Star Wars experience that was both extremely fun and faithful to the Star Wars universe. Growing up, this was one of my favorite games to play. Jedi Outcast came out right in the middle of the release of the prequel trilogy, as well as in the middle of what I like to refer to as the golden age of Star Wars video games. There was an abundance of great Star Wars media being released at that time, and Jedi Outcast was right up there with the best of them. Armed with the lightsaber and classic force powers like push, pull, and lightning, you got to run around both new and iconic Star Wars locations and feel what it was like to play as a Jedi, something that was exhilarating to do as a child obsessed with Star Wars. This is one of the earliest games that showed me the potential of what was possible in a video game, and it helped deepen my love for this incredible franchise in the process. With this amazing game turning 20 years old this year, I thought it was the perfect time to reflect back on what made this game so special and what it represented and still represents for the Star Wars universe. In this video, I'll be examining Jedi Outcast's story and place within the Star Wars expanded universe, which I still consider to be canon, and why I feel this is one of the best narrative examples for future Star Wars media to follow. I'll also be discussing this game's fun combat and interesting gameplay mechanics, from its stellar lightsaber combat and enjoyable puzzles to its not so stellar shooting mechanics. So please join me as I take a look back at one of the best Star Wars video games ever made, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. So what is it that makes Jedi Outcast stand out from the plethora of other Star Wars media that have been released over the years? While the obvious answer would most likely be the game's exceptional lightsaber combat, and trust me, we'll get to that, I'd like to start off by instead discussing why this game was such a fantastic Star Wars experience back in the day, and why it really stands out in this new era of Star Wars that we unfortunately find ourselves in. Jedi Outcast begins several years after the end of Return of the Jedi, and a couple of years after the end of the previous game, Dark Forces 2. After defeating the Dark Jedi Jarek at the fabled Valley of the Jedi, and nearly falling to the dark side in the process, our hero Kyle Katarn no longer trusts himself to wield the Force, so he relinquishes both his lightsaber and his ability to use the Force, and returns to his former life as a mercenary. Along with his partner Jan Ors, he travels across the galaxy on missions for the New Republic, working to help them restore peace to the galaxy in the years following the fall of the Galactic Empire. One of those missions involves investigating an old Imperial base on a planet known as Kedjum, which is where Jedi Outcast picks up the action. Playing as Kyle Katarn, you make your way through a variety of exotic Star Wars locations over the course of the game, battling stormtroopers, Imperial officers, gangsters, and reborn Dark Jedi artificially infused with the Force. You solve puzzles, fight bosses, restore your connection to the Force, and work to stop a group known as the Imperial Remnant from wiping out the Jedi. It's a classic Star Wars adventure that feels right at home within the Star Wars expanded universe. In fact, this is the kind of thing I wanted and expected to see after the end of Return of the Jedi, not the undoing and rehashing of the original trilogy that we were given in Disney sequel movies. After the Rebellion defeated the Empire at the end of the original trilogy, I wanted to see their efforts to rebuild both the Republic and the Jedi, something that I think would have been fascinating to watch. The prequels gave us the opportunity to see what the galaxy was like before the rise of Darth Sidious and the Empire, and now a set of sequels would give us a chance to see the galaxy trying to return to that state. Seeing Luke Skywalker opening his own Jedi Academy and training the next generation of peacekeepers would have made for a really great movie. Instead, Disney saw fit to throw out the entire expanded universe and wrote their own version of the original trilogy instead. They had Luke start a Jedi Academy, but then destroyed it and all the Jedi in just a couple of decades. They had the Rebellion form the New Republic, but then destroyed that too at the start of The Force Awakens. They tried so hard to recreate the original trilogy that they ended up undoing all the things that the original trilogy had accomplished, making the entire story essentially worthless. Old characters like Han Solo and Luke Skywalker either regressed or acted completely out of character, and new characters like Rey and Kylo Ren were meant to replace the likes of Luke and Darth Vader instead of establishing their own identities. The Empire was just renamed the First Order, and the Rebellion was renamed the Resistance, and the galaxy went on as if the Battle of Endor never even happened. Those movies were such a disappointment as a massive Star Wars fan because they ignored or ran away from all the things that make Star Wars one of the greatest franchises of all time. On the contrary, the expanded universe took what made Star Wars great and used it to create new and original Star Wars stories that expanded the Star Wars universe without disrupting existing Star Wars lore. I can't stress that point enough. The beauty of most of these Star Wars video games and books that make up the expanded universe is that they expanded the Star Wars universe. They didn't undo the work others had done. Lucas's films served as a foundation for this wonderful fictional universe, but this world has grown well beyond those 6 movies. Many talented storytellers have taken Star Wars to new and exciting places that honored the movies while also establishing their own place in the Star Wars universe, and Jedi Outcast is one of the best examples of that. You have this broken Jedi in Kyle Katarn who is afraid to use the Force, yet is pulled back into a world he tried to leave behind. You have the New Republic trying to restore peace to the galaxy after the rebellion successfully overthrew the Empire, and you have Luke Skywalker trying to rebuild the Jedi while supporting this fledgling Republic. You also have the Imperial Remnant, a holdover from the Galactic Empire that is looking to once again take control of the galaxy. Now, however, they are acting more like the rebellion than an official government, working in the shadows to achieve their goals. And then you have this Dark Jedi in Dasan, a new villain who is looking to create an army of Force users so that he can wipe out the Jedi. Instead of training them the old-fashioned way, however, he's looking to quickly raise an army through artificial means, eventually making use of the fabled Valley of the Jedi to achieve his goal. This is how you expand the Star Wars universe, not by undoing the very thing you claim to love so much. Who wouldn't want to see the rebuilding of the Jedi after a movie literally titled Return of the Jedi? Who wouldn't find it interesting to see the Galactic Empire struggle to stay in power while the rebellion forms a new republic? Who wouldn't want to see Luke and the fledgling Jedi Academy take on an army of Dark Jedi? These are just some of the things that the expanded universe explored across its various pieces of media, expanding on the stories and characters we loved without undoing or regressing them. Take Luke Skywalker for example. In this game, players get to interact with him at various points throughout the campaign, allowing us to see the original Star Wars hero as he develops into the Grandmaster of the Jedi Order. His calm and collected presence exudes the wisdom of a man who has wrestled with the dark side and come out the other side, a man who fully embodies what it means to be a Jedi Knight. This Luke isn't trying to kill his students because he's afraid they will fall to the dark side. He guides and mentors them so that they have the confidence and the desire to stay on the path of light. Instead of detaining Kyle because of his anger at Dasan for supposedly killing his partner Jan, he warns him of the dangers of the dark side and trusts that he will make the right decisions in the end. This version of Luke meshed well with the image I had of him after watching Return of the Jedi, and it helped make this amazing fictional universe feel more connected as a result. And this was just one example from one game that made up this massive expanded universe. While Jedi Outcast played an important role in helping to expand the Star Wars universe, it was far from the only piece of media to do so. Many people have contributed fantastic stories to this universe over the years, helping to create this living, breathing fictional world for all of us to enjoy. For me, the expanded universe will always remain Star Wars canon because it embodies everything that makes Lucas's Star Wars movies so exceptional. From the characters, to the stories, to the music, to the exotic science fiction locations we get to explore. The expanded universe has everything a Star Wars fan could possibly want, and Jedi Outcast is one of the best representations of that. Like I said before, Jedi Outcast fit right in with the rest of the Star Wars media being released at the time. In fact, I've often thought that Jedi Outcast would make a great movie if anyone ever decided to make it. This game was able to stand on its own as an excellent Star Wars story that continued to expand the Star Wars universe, and that to me is a huge reason why the game was so well received back in 2002, and why it still holds up to this day. But what would a video game be without its gameplay? While Jedi Outcast tells a memorable Star Wars story, it also provides a stellar gameplay experience that makes you feel like you're part of the Star Wars universe. From blaster rifles and stormtroopers, to lightsabers, force powers, and Dark Jedi, there is so much Star Wars action packed into this game, and Jedi Outcast makes great use of almost all of it. First, let's start with the not so great part of Jedi Outcast gameplay, then we'll move on to the things this game does really well. Since Kyle gave up his lightsaber and force powers after the events of the previous game, you must make your way through the first 2 levels of Jedi Outcast using a variety of weapons and explosives that you scavenge along the way. While this sounds like a cool way to engage with the Star Wars universe, this game's first-person shooting mechanics unfortunately don't hold up very well, making the gameplay experience far from ideal. Enemies move around very erratically, and your blaster fire is often not as accurate as it should be, which makes you feel more like a stormtrooper rather than the main character of a video game. This leads to long drawn out combat encounters that can be a real pain to deal with. Taking down enemies from a distance is often difficult and unreliable, and if you try to get closer, you yourself become an easy target, leading to significant health loss and frequent deaths. In the end, you'll find yourself constantly moving around while shooting in order to avoid incoming blaster fire, which in turn makes your aim even less accurate than it already is. These poor shooting mechanics make these 2 opening levels a lot more annoying and tedious than they should be, which can turn a lot of people off if they are trying this game for the first time. Even as a longtime veteran of this game, I still struggle in these early levels because I have so much trouble trouble hitting anything with my blasters, and I never seem to have enough health while fighting. Because firefights take so long, there's a good chance you'll end up taking a fair amount of damage, and since you can't heal yourself with the Force until later in the game, you have to make do with the back-to-tanks and med packs that you find throughout each level. That sounds okay in theory, but the reality of the situation is that there just aren't enough healing supplies to constantly keep you at or near full health because you're taking so much damage all the time. What this means is that you oftentimes enter combat with very little health and have to keep repeating the same fights over and over again until you finally manage to kill everything without taking any damage. It's an unfortunate way to start the game, but thankfully it doesn't represent the entire gameplay experience. Once you've completed the 2 opening missions, you travel to the Valley of the Jedi to restore Kyle's connection to the Force, then you travel to Yavin 4 to meet Luke Skywalker and retrieve your lightsaber. These new tools improve combat dramatically, leading to a much more enjoyable gameplay experience. A huge part of why Jedi Outcast is so fondly remembered is because it featured some of the best lightsaber and Jedi combat ever seen in a video game. You have a ton of control over how you swing your lightsaber around, choosing things like direction, style, and different combos. You can also use the Force to gain the upper hand on enemies, pushing them to the ground, spraying them with lightning, or using the iconic Force choke. This combat honestly felt like it was ahead of its time, and even now, there is still no Star Wars game like it out there, except for Jedi Academy, which is the sequel to this game. There was something the developers wrote in this game's manual that I think does a great job of describing lightsaber combat in Jedi Outcast. They said, in the hands of a Jedi, the lightsaber is an artist's brush, elegant and powerful. I like that description a lot because it really captures the feeling you get while swinging a lightsaber around in this game. Much like an artist's brush, the lightsaber is an extension of you and your controller. It is totally responsive to whatever command you give it. If you want to swing your saber horizontally from left to right, it will respond accordingly. If you want to slash vertically downwards or sweep the saber in an arc around you, it'll do that too. The controls are designed in a way to give you a level of freedom and control that helps simulate this feeling of actually wielding a lightsaber, and that's one of the things that's always impressed me about this game. Using the Force is also extremely satisfying, and another big part of why Jedi Outcast combat works so well. While you're slashing up enemies with your lightsaber, you're also using the Force to push and pull enemies, run really fast, and devastate your opponents with lightning. You'll start the game with basic versions of these abilities, but they'll eventually become more powerful as you make your way through Jedi Outcast. These abilities open up combat even further by giving you multiple ways to approach most combat scenarios. They also make some of the issues I mentioned earlier a lot more bearable. While you will be using your lightsaber for the vast majority of this game, there are still a few sections later on where you will need to use a gun in order to take out distant targets. If you use Force speed, you'll actually be able to slow down time so that you have more time to line up your shots properly and avoid incoming blaster fire, which makes using guns in this game a lot more bearable. Similarly, you'll eventually acquire the ability to heal yourself using the Force, which is invaluable in this game. With this skill, you can always enter a new fight at full health, and you can even heal yourself during a fight when the ability gets more powerful. This reduces the number of fights you have to repeat over and over again due to low health, and it reduces your reliance on both back-to-tanks and medpacks. When you combine these helpful and satisfying Force abilities with the finesse and freedom of this game's lightsaber combat, you get an incredibly enjoyable gameplay experience that helps Jedi Outcast stand out from many of the other Star Wars games that have been released over the years. This game just does a phenomenal job of making you feel like a powerful Jedi. You're running around each level deflecting blaster bolts, using the Force to move objects and reach high places, and engaging in aggressive negotiations with your lightsaber and the Force. It's a Star Wars fan's dream to be able to step into the shoes of a Jedi Knight and fight with the full power of the Force. And this game does it better than pretty much any game out there. Now, while it's fun fighting stormtroopers and other basic soldiers in this game, I think Jedi Outcast is at its best when you're fighting against Hassan's army of Dark Jedi. These reborn soldiers have been artificially infused with the Force from the Valley of the Jedi, meaning they have all the same abilities that you do. They can push and pull you, move super fast, and even blast you with lightning if they so desire. This makes fighting these guys really interesting because they aren't going to get pushed around like a normal stormtrooper. They'll block your lightsaber swings and even resist your Force attacks, which means you need to get creative in how you take them out. This allows you to make full use of this game's smooth and well-designed lightsaber mechanics, leading to some of the most enjoyable gameplay segments in Jedi Outcast. Dueling another Jedi is another one of a Star Wars fan's biggest fantasies, and this game once again does it better than pretty much anyone else out there. There was even a whole multiplayer mode where people could go head to head in full-on lightsaber combat, which I had a blast playing with my brother as a kid. We would always play capture the flag on Nar Shaddaa, and I would constantly try to push people off the sides of every platform, which never got old. This game managed to make playing as a Jedi both fun and immersive, whether you were taking out a room full of stormtroopers, battling a Dark Jedi, or duking it out with other people in multiplayer. The smoothness of the gameplay and the freedom combat gave to its players made for one of the best Star Wars experiences, one that still largely holds up to this day. Before we wrap up this discussion, I'd like to discuss one final aspect of Jedi Outcast gameplay, which is its puzzle solving. While a significant part of the game is spent fighting people, there are plenty of puzzles and obstacles you need to overcome as you make your way through this game. Every level presents players with a series of puzzles and challenges that require you to make use of your weapons, powers, and observation skills in order to solve and overcome them. Sometimes you need to look for a hidden passage or find the right switch to press, while other times it involves using the Force to manipulate the world around you. I really enjoy games that involve both good combat and good puzzle solving, and Jedi Outcast does a great job of balancing both of these gameplay elements. One of the reasons why I like the puzzle solving in this game so much is the fact that Jedi Outcast doesn't hold your hand while you make your way through its levels. While you are given general objectives to complete in each level, there are no objective markers that tell you where you need to go. You need to pay attention to what's going on around you and look for anything that might look like a solution or a way forward. I like this way of doing things because it forces you to think critically whenever you enter a room. Are there any doors I haven't gone through? Are there any switches I can press? What do those switches do? Is there a hidden vent or passageway I can access? Is there anything prompting me to use the Force? It's a sort of old school way of approaching game design, which I find to be very stimulating. For example, one of my favorite sections of this game is when you first go to Yavin 4 to retrieve your lightsaber. In order to get it, you must complete a series of trials that teach you the basics of how your Force powers work, using the Force to do things like flip tiles, create a staircase, and quickly dash across a moving platform. Then you use what you've learned to retrieve your lightsaber from its cage by combining Force powers. The game doesn't tell you exactly what to do, but rather leaves it up to the player to use their new abilities to figure out each solution. This sort of puzzle solving adds another element to Jedi Outcast gameplay beyond simply taking down enemies, and it's part of why I hold this game in such a high regard. Now, because the game isn't very big, it can get away with not having a bunch of objective markers all over the place. If you're stuck in a particular section, you can just retrace your steps and see if there's something you missed or overlooked because the areas aren't that big. Imagine trying to find an item or a person in a game as massive as Skyrim or The Witcher 3 without any sort of markers to guide you. It simply wouldn't work unless you knew the game really well, which is why those games have maps and objective markers to help guide players. The fact that Jedi Outcast is both linear and small means it can get away with not guiding the player in that way, which adds a different type of challenge to the game. You really have to pay attention to your surroundings and determine for yourself how you're supposed to proceed, and to be honest, that's one of the things I respect most about this game. When you combine this well-designed puzzle solving with the game's excellent lightsaber combat, you have a fun and engaging gameplay experience that complements the game's great storytelling and helps make Jedi Outcast one of the premier Star Wars experiences. So that concludes this look back at Star Wars Jedi Outcast, a game that remains one of my personal favorites to play. There is so much to love about this game, from its story, to its excellent combat, to its fun puzzles, to its iconic soundtrack and locations. This game represents the real potential of the Star Wars expanded universe, in everything from its storytelling to its gameplay, and I really think it should be used as an example for future Star Wars projects to follow, whether it's a movie, a TV show, or a game. Disney has the power to fix their own mistakes, they only need to look at Star Wars' past to help craft its future. Now, while the game does do a lot of things well, I will admit it does have its flaws. I already talked about how bad its shooting mechanics are, but there are other things in this game that aren't really that great. Some of the escort missions, where you have to keep an NPC alive, can be a real pain to deal with, and there are parts like the army of snipers on Nar Shaddaa and the stealth section in the Karen Astro facility that are just straight up frustrating. And that final boss battle against Dasan could have been so much better. The game does a great job of setting up the fight and making it feel epic, but Dasan just feels overpowered for the entire fight. I can't tell you how many times he's pulled me to the ground with the Force, hung his lightsaber over my body, and waited for me to stand up and instantly die. It feels like there's no defense against any of his moves, and it usually takes me a long time and a lot of saves to finally put an end to him. But these issues only represent a minor part of Jedi Outcast. Most of this game is an absolute blast to play through, with the good parts more than making up for any issues the game may have. It may be rough around the edges at times, but Jedi Outcast is still a fantastic game that remains one of the best Star Wars experiences ever made.